Okay. Oh, well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is very exciting because I'm about to introduce James Patterson. James Patterson has created more enduring fictional characters than any other novelist writing today. So there. Take that, Dickens. Worldwide, he has sold over 305 million books, including The Middle School, Alex Cross, Michael Bennett, Women's Murder Club, and the Maximum Ride series. For the past decade, he has been devoting more and more of his time to championing books and reading. His website, readkiddoread.com, is designed to help parents, teachers, and librarians ignite the next generation's excitement about reading. Mr. Patterson has donated over 250,000 books to kids across the United States and over 650,000 books to soldiers at home and overseas. Last year, he distributed over $1 million in grants to independent bookstores with children's sections. This year, he is donating $1.5 million to school libraries. He has established scholarships in teacher education at 22 schools, including Vanderbilt University, the University of Wisconsin, and Manhattan College. He is the recipient of the Edgar Award, the International Thriller Writers Thriller Master Award, and the Children's Choice Book Award for Author of the Year. Please give a big welcome to Mr. James Patterson.
Sit, please, sit. So there. Hi, I'm Stephen King. My wife says, Sue is in here somewhere, that I have one mission up here, or today, which is to get Nathan Lane's autograph. We'll see. I do have a second mission, though, and that's whenever I speak to large groups of librarians and teachers, and I always start by saying I'm here to save lives, and that's true this morning as well. Before I get into that, though, they asked me to say a few things about myself. Tall, powerfully built, 33 years old, 170 IQ, fiction writer. Life story, I got some good advice one time. I actually followed it. I used to, when I was growing up upstate Newburgh, New York, my grandfather would take me on his truck route once a week during the summers. And we would get up around 4 o'clock in the morning and pack up his truck. And, if you think about it, that's not necessarily the best job in the world. But he was a really a buoyant, effervescent kind of character, and we'd be going over the Storm King Mountain every morning when I went with him to work, and he'd be singing. He had a terrible voice, and we'd sing all the songs of those days, put another nickel in the Nickelodeon and things like that. And he told me, he said at one point, he said, Jim, I don't care what you do when you grow up. I don't care if you become a truck driver like me, or if you become a surgeon, or he wouldn't even think of me being a novelist at that point. He said, but just remember, when you go over the mountain to work in the morning, you got to be singing. And I do. However, at a certain point, I did not listen to my grandfather in terms of how I should work. And I got a job at J. Walter Thompson Advertising. And pretty soon I was singing advertising jingles on my way to work, which isn't necessarily the happiest thing in the world. I did write the line, I'm a Toys R Us kid, so that was a fun experience. I eventually escaped from advertising, and I've been clean for 25 years now. As it's turned out, I live in Palm Beach now. I call it the city of used-to-be's. used to be president of, used to be chairman of, used to be spouse, used to be, whatever. So I have been poor, and I have been middle class, and then I was poor again, and then I was middle class again, and now I'm rich. And I must say, having sampled it all, I prefer being rich. But I don't think I'd be here in a position possibly to get Nathan Lane's autograph, and maybe Juliana Margulies, and maybe Kalinda, if I hadn't traveled that full poor, middle class, poor again, middle class circuit. And I think that all those experiences sort of made me who I am and helped to create the different kinds of books that I do. My first novel, the Thomas Behrman number, was rejected by 31 publishers. It then won an Edgar as the best first mystery. I keep a file of all the editors' names who turned it down. Sometimes they send me books for blurbs. Many of them are dead now. My so-called overnight success took about 15 years. The first bestseller was Along Came a Spider. And I was home, and I looked at the New York Times book review, and I see that this book is, Along Came a Spider is on the bestseller list. And I go, this must be a misprint. So I went, there was a Barnes & Noble on Broadway, and there are no more bookstores in New York, which is bizarre. So I went into this Barnes & Noble to check it out, and what we'll do, authors, is we'll count the books. And we'll go, used to be 12, and now there's 8, so the book actually is selling. And the other thing we do is that if we're in the store or in the airport or whatever, and you pick up our book, we watch. We're watching you. And if you put it down, it breaks our heart. Seriously, that's correct, right? If you buy it, it makes our week. I'm not kidding, even at this point. I mean, I see somebody and they buy, So at any rate, so I'm in this bookstore, and while I'm there, this woman picks up Along Came a Spider, and she looks at it and examines it carefully and goes through the body copy and whatever. And she puts it on her arm, and she's walking down the aisle, and I'm like ecstatic now. The pile was down. The New York Times says I'm a bestseller, and I actually am watching this woman purchase the book. She gets about halfway down the aisle. She slides it in her pocketbook. She stole the book. And all I'm thinking is, does that count as a sale? Somewhere in there, and Nathan certainly knows about this, and I hope the rest of you can avoid this, Hollywood called. I made the mistake of answering. They have these press junkets in Hollywood, which are really weird. If you write a book, other than at a function like this, you can't find a journalist. But if you do a movie, Son of Chucky 6 or whatever, there will be a room this big of journalists at the press junket, maybe half this big. And so Paramount invited me out for Kiss the Girls, and they said, we better let Jim see the movie because the press is going to ask him what he thinks of it, So I'm watching this movie from a book that I wrote, and I watched the first scene, I go, all right, well, that wasn't in the book. And I watched the second scene, I go, well, that wasn't in the book either. And in that scene, Alex Cross is building a ship in a bottle, and I'm going, that doesn't seem very cinematic to me, but what do I know? And then a woman comes in, and I'm going, who's that woman? I don't know who she is. It's not as great, and she never comes back in the movie. So I see Morgan Freeman a little later in the press junket, and I go, Morgan, who is that woman in the second scene of the movie? He said, oh, that's Alex Cross's sister. I said, oh, I didn't know Alex had a sister. The most recent Hollywood story, I get a lot about the co-writing and, whatever. Here's my thing on the co-writing, okay? Simon and Garfunkel, Gilbert and Sullivan, all the cathedrals in Europe, the internet, it's all, collaborations. At any rate, so I go into Hollywood, and they take me to I have a series coming on CBS called Zoo in the summer, and they take me to the writer's room for Zoo, and here's 10 writers collaborating, writing these 40-page scripts, and I go, this is so weird. And one of the head writers, and they're very, the thing about screenwriters in Hollywood, they're like at the bottom. They're below everybody, except if a novelist comes, and then there's somebody actually below them, So the head writer, and he's a nice enough guy, and it was a nice group, I liked them and all, But he says, James, let's be honest, Zoo is basically, it's a pulp novel, it's a B novel, but we're going to do an A-plus job on it, And I bit down. I said, well, thank you. But what I'm really thinking is it's too bad that, you're not getting Saul Bellows Herzog, an A-plus novel that you could really do an A-plus job on, My best Hollywood story, actually, my best experience is I was a cartoon at one point. I was on The Simpsons. And in that episode, Marge she's reading one of my books. She goes, oh, I just love James Patterson. And then I'm on a horse on the beach behind her, riding on this white horse. And then Marge is on the horse with me, and she's sort of whispering sweet nothings in my ear and stuff. And she says, James, we have to write some nursery rhyme titles for some of your Alex Cross books. And I'm going, Marge, there's more cool things we could do than that. And then this bell rings, and my eyes go back and forth. And then it cuts to the bedroom, and Homer is coming in. And he says to Marge, Marge, that was great last night, but why did you keep calling me James? Okay, that brings me back, and I actually sent flowers to the studio after the episode, and to this date, Marge has never said anything. No flowers back, no little note. But that gets me back to where I started, which is the notion of being at this breakfast and trying to save lives. And my mission in life these days, and my obsession, is to get more kids reading. And there are two kinds of kids that I think it's important. One group are the good readers, and that's who you think about all the time because they're a little bit more, you see them a little bit more in your stores. And I think the thing with those kids, to get them reading more broadly so that they become better human beings, better citizens. And because right now we have this thing about being very narrow-minded about how we look at the world, whether it's CNBC or Fox, and we just need to think more broadly because these issues we're dealing with they're complicated. And the second group, and this is more important to me, are the at-risk kids. Because if those kids don't become competent readers, and there are millions and millions and millions of them in this country, if they don't become competent readers, how are they going to get through high school, honestly? How are they going to get jobs after high school, honestly? I mean, it's just so difficult. And I do think that we were put at this breakfast to help save lives. I know that sounds a little like a Kurt Vonnegut novel, or maybe Tom Robbins, or maybe Mr. Novak. But sitting here and just listening isn't going to do the job. And obviously, I hate following stand-up comedians, but that's not going to do it either. Really, who better than the people at this breakfast to do something, really powerful about books and reading in this country? So if you'd humor me for a minute, would you all kind of stand up? How weird is that? Would you just stand up instead of sitting and listening, and stand up and listen and think about this notion of what we need to do to preserve great books in this country? And we do need to do that. It's not just going to happen by itself. And stand for the survival of our wonderful, occasionally irritating, but mostly overworked and wonderful publishers. And stand up for adult and children's literacy, which you really can do things about, because it really isn't enough for us to sit and listen and complain. And there's a movie out, Tomorrowland, which isn't a great movie, but the notion is basically stand up and do stuff. It's a very noble thing. So, as Nathan said, I'm doing a bunch of stuff. I'm dancing as fast as I can. But we all need to do things. So I hope you'll all leave. You can sit. That was great. Thank you. But I hope we'll all leave this BEA with a little bit of a personal mission in terms of, one, getting the kids in our own homes reading, okay? And sometimes people come up to me all the time. I can't get my kids reading. And I go, I don't know, did you get them to the dinner table? Yeah. Do you have rules in the house like no tracking mud? Yeah. I can't get them reading. It's our job to do that, to get the kids who visit our bookstores, to get them reading, to buttonhole the parents. The parents come in and they're not thinking about their kids. That's why I always love it when the independents or whatever will put their children's sections up front, or at least a part of their children's sections. That really does help. It gets the parents, oh yeah, right, I have kids, I forgot about them, which is huge. One other thing, and this is in the spirit, I don't know if you saw in the Times today, but I'm announcing a new imprint for kids at Little Brown. It's called Jimmy. And the mission is, I think it's very simple, but I think it's very clear, and I think it has a little bit of elegance to it, which is the notion, and we have to deliver on it, but that when a kid finishes the Jimmy book, they'll say, please give me another book. I mean, it's really that simple. And a lot of kids, unlike, probably all of us were readers as kids, and we probably said that, but most kids don't. Please give me another book. And the other thing is, whatever I make off of this is all going to go to charity, all of my precious lucre, going back to independent bookstores and local bookstores and school libraries and giving away books. So I'm doing stuff. And if I was funnier, I wouldn't have to do so much stuff, but I'm not. So thank you very much. Thank you.
James Patterson, ladies and gentlemen.
Funding for Bookview Now is provided by the Wincote Foundation.